In a small village surrounded by tall mountains and endless green fields, there lived an old man named Karim. He always carried peace within him, somehow always knew the right words to say. Every evening before sunset, Karim would sit beside the river near the edge of the village. Zayan rarely smiled. He often sat alone staring at the river as if he were carrying sadness, too heavy for someone his age. Karim noticed this long before anyone else did. The villagers respected him deeply because no matter how difficult life became, he never judged anyone, and among those children was a boy named Zayan. Unlike the others, Zayan stayed quiet, lost inside his thoughts. One evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, Karim looked at the boy sitting silently beside him and said softly, "You look like someone carrying a burden much bigger than himself." Zayan tried to pretend he was fine, but his eyes immediately filled with emotion. For a few moments he stayed silent, then finally whispered, "My father left us 3 years ago." Karim listened carefully, without interrupting. "He promised he would come back after finding work in another city." Zayan continued bitterly, "But he never returned. At first, my mother waited every day for his letters. Then she stopped talking about him completely. Everyone tells me to move on, but I can't. Sometimes I hate him so much. And other times, I just want him to come back." The boy clenched his fists tightly while speaking. Karim looked at the flowing river for a long moment before replying. "Come back tomorrow morning before sunrise. I want to show you something." Zayan frowned in confusion but nodded quietly. The next morning, the air was cold and fog covered the river like a blanket. Zayan arrived to find Karim standing beside an old wooden boat tied near the shore. Without saying much, the old man handed the boy a large backpack filled with stones. "Put this on," he instructed calmly. Zayan struggled beneath the heavy weight, but obeyed. Karim stepped into the boat and motioned for the boy to row across the river. At first the task seemed manageable, but after a few minutes, Zayan's shoulders began aching badly. His breathing became heavier while the backpack pressed painfully against his back. The river current slowly grew stronger near the center, making the boat harder to control. Water splashed against the sides, while the boy's arms trembled from exhaustion. Finally, frustrated and angry, Zayan shouted, "Why are you making me do this?" Karim answered calmly, "Keep rowing." A few more minutes passed before the boy finally cried out, "I can't carry this anymore." The old man looked at him gently and replied, "Then throw the backpack into the river." Confused, Zayan opened the bag and discovered it was filled with ordinary rocks. "These stones are useless," he said. Karim nodded slowly. "Exactly. Then why keep carrying them?" After hesitating for a moment, Zayan threw the backpack into the river. Instantly, relief spread through his body. The boat became lighter. Rowing became easier. The pain in his shoulders slowly disappeared. When they reached the other side, Karim sat beneath a large tree and motioned for the boy to sit beside him. "Pain is like that backpack," he explained quietly. "At first, we carry it because we believe we must. But over time, we forget we have the choice to put it down." Zayan stared silently at the river. Karim picked up a dry leaf from the ground and dropped it into the water. "Look at the river," he said. "It keeps flowing because it does not try to hold on to every leaf that falls into it. If it did, the water would stop, moving and become dirty and lifeless." The boy listened carefully while the old man continued, "Many people spend their lives holding on to anger, regret, betrayal, and sadness. They think carrying pain proves how deeply they loved someone. But pain that is held too long stops life from moving forward." Zayan lowered his head and whispered, "I don't know how to let go." Karim smiled softly. "Most people don't. That's why they suffer for years." Over the following weeks, Zayan began visiting Karim every evening after helping his mother at home. Sometimes they talked for hours beside the river, and sometimes they sat together in complete silence. One evening, Zayan finally gathered the courage to ask, "Have you ever lost someone?" For the first time, sadness appeared in Karim's eyes. He looked toward the horizon before answering quietly, "My wife." Zayan was surprised because Karim always seemed peaceful and strong. The old man smiled sadly and continued, 40 years ago, when she died, I became angry at the world. I stopped speaking to people. I stopped leaving my house. I blamed life for taking away the person I loved most." He paused for a moment before continuing. "One morning, after months of hiding from the world, I walked outside and saw that my garden had died. The flowers were dry, the plants had withered, and everything looked lifeless. Then I realized something important. While I was busy holding on to my grief, I stopped taking care of the life still remaining around me. Zion remained silent as, Kareem added softly, pain deserves to be felt. But if you hold it too tightly for too long, it slowly destroys the parts of you still capable of happiness. The old man's words stayed inside Zion's mind for many days. Slowly, he began noticing how anger had changed him. He realized he no longer enjoyed playing with friends. He became rude to his mother, even though she sacrificed everything for him. Sometimes he spent hours imagining what he would say to his father if he ever returned. Other times he imagined never seeing him again. The sadness inside him had become part of who he was. One evening, beside the river, Zion finally admitted, "If I let go of my anger, I'm afraid it means my father hurt us for nothing." Kareem shook his head gently. "No, my child. Letting go does not erase what happened. It simply means you refuse to let someone else's actions control your heart forever." Then the old man pointed toward a fisherman nearby, untangling his net. "Look at him," Kareem said. The net became trapped because it held onto too many broken branches. Hearts become trapped the same way. A few months later, a terrible storm arrived in the village. Dark clouds covered the sky, while powerful winds shook the trees violently. Heavy rain caused the river to rise higher and higher until villagers feared the old wooden bridge might collapse. Everyone rushed outside, trying to secure ropes and protect nearby homes from flooding. During the chaos, a young man slipped near the edge of the river and fell into the violent current. Panic spread instantly as people shouted helplessly. The water moved too fast for anyone to safely reach him. Before anyone could stop him, Kareem tied a rope around his waist and jumped into the raging river. Zion watched in horror while the old man fought against the powerful current. Several times it looked as though both men would disappear beneath the dark water forever. Villagers pulled desperately on the rope while Kareem struggled to keep the drowning man above the surface. Finally, after what felt like forever, both were dragged safely back onto land. Exhausted and soaked, Kareem lay on the muddy ground, breathing heavily while villagers surrounded him in relief. That night, after the storm passed, Zion sat beside Kareem inside his small house while rain still tapped softly against the windows. "Why would you risk your life like that?" the boy asked shakily. Kareem stared into the fire burning near the wall before answering quietly, "Because fear becomes lighter when you stop clinging to life so tightly." Zion frowned in confusion. The old man smiled gently and explained, "People spend so much time trying to protect themselves from pain that they stop truly living. They become prisoners of fear, regret, and loss. But life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced." The boy sat silently, thinking deeply about those words. For the first time, he began understanding that letting go was not about forgetting pain. It was about refusing to let pain define the rest of your life. As winter slowly changed into spring, the heaviness inside Zion began fading little by little. He still missed his father, and some nights sadness returned stronger than before. But he no longer allowed anger to consume him completely. He started laughing again with other children. He helped his mother more often without complaining. Some evenings he even sat alone beside the river, simply listening to the sound of flowing water. One peaceful evening, while golden sunlight reflected across the river, Zion quietly said, "I think I'm finally tired of being angry." Kareem smiled warmly. "Then your heart is finally learning to rest." The boy looked toward the water and asked softly, "How do you know when you've truly let go?" Kareem bent down, picked up a small leaf floating near the shore, and gently placed it into the river. Together they watched it drift peacefully with the current until it disappeared into the distance. "When you can remember without drowning," the old man replied. Years later, long after Kareem had passed away, villagers still spoke about the wise old man beside the river and the lonely boy who slowly learned how to heal. Zion eventually became known for his kindness and calmness, much like Kareem himself. Whenever someone came to him carrying pain they could not release, he would take them to the river and tell them the lesson that changed his life forever. Holding on to pain may feel like strength, but true strength is knowing when to let it go. In morale, letting go is not weakness. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who stop carrying pain that no longer helps them grow.